It's Wednesday, August 25th, and the time for your Barbados Today morning news update. Government will be purchasing 150 emergency houses from China. Minister of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, Dr. William Duguid, made the announcement in Parliament yesterday in an update on the rebuilding and repairing process for the houses damaged by the freak storm and Hurricane Elsa. Speaking during a supplementary estimate for 2021-2022, Dr. Duguid said his ministry required just over $50 million to complete the rebuilds and repairs and to purchase the houses from China. He revealed that a cursory estimate of the damages done by the two weather systems was in the region of $74 million. He said government had also received 2,106 incident reports from the Disaster Emergency Management in relation to the damaged houses.
So far, they've completed St. Peter, St. Andrew, St. James, St. John, St. George, and Christchurch. And we still have some to do in St. Lucy, St. Joseph, St. Thomas, St. Michael, and St. Philip. However, so far we've completed 90% of the technical assessments for all of the reports. And these were essentially done so that we can see which houses are total rebuilds, which houses are repairs. And what we found, based on that initial assessment, is that 25% of all reports happen to be rebuilds, new houses, whereas the remaining 75% are repairs. So of the 90%, which is 1,890, we found so far, up to present, 466 houses. 466 houses have to be totally rebuilt from that system. And 1,075 houses have to be repairs.
Minister Duguid, however, maintained that the National Housing Corporation, the Urban Development Commission, and the Rural Development Commission simply could not handle all of the work in a timely manner. He said a decision was made to equip 6 workshops where all of the cuts of the houses would be done, then transported as a bundle to the location and put together, but only 3 of those workshops were fully functioning.
Even with the best will in the world, those workshops can only produce essentially 18 to 20 of those houses a week. Now, it doesn't mean that we can get the houses erected. It just means that even with the best will in the world, we have found that those workshops can only produce, in terms of cuts, 20 houses a week. So if we were to do 500 of those houses, that's like 25, 26 weeks just in cuts. So that's 6, 7, 8, 7 months, if all things being equal, 6, 7 months down the road, and we still would not have been able to meet the requirements for the response. And that's just rebuilds, nothing to do with the repairs, that's just rebuilds.
As a result, he said, the decision was taken to purchase the emergency houses from China, which are of good quality and would be constructed using new technology.
So we made a decision that we had to buy some emergency houses. And we decided that we would get about 150 emergency houses. These essentially will be prefabricated houses which we're importing, and we're using a new technology called light gauge steel. And those light gauge steel houses we will be importing from China with a Barbadian company, and getting those to be able to jumpstart and to boost the response that we need to be able to respond as quickly as we can and as efficiently and as effectively as we can to what happened from the freak storm and from Hurricane Elsa.
In other news, opposition leader Bishop Joseph Arthurlee has suggested that the old Glenderry prison be turned into a juvenile offenders halfway house, feeling that, he said, government could consider using Glenderry to provide temporary relief housing for fire and hurricane disaster victims. He made the comments in the Parliament yesterday.
A young offenders institution is needed, in my view, in Barbados that has long been mooted. We are struggling with the facilities for the girls' industrial school and the young male facility DODS. And here is a space perhaps that we can use to build a type of facility that would allow for proper treatment of the behavior exhibited by those who are young, inexperienced, a bit unpurposed in life at the time, perhaps ill-advised in their actions, fall afoul of the law, but we can still have them redeemed if we have the institutional infrastructure in place.
Dozens of regional and international visitors have been turning to the Barbados Alliance to end homelessness for assistance when they find themselves without a place to stay while in Barbados. And the charity's president, Kima Safri, says it's putting his organization under financial pressure. He told reporters that as many as 50 tourists from the Caribbean and beyond have passed through the doors of the organization so far this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
We find that a number of our neighboring Caribbean countries, both men and women, we also find persons from the UK, from the US, and from the European countries that are finding themselves homeless here in Barbados. And when they do find themselves homeless, the organization is then called in to assist. One of the main reasons for the homelessness is the COVID-19. It's COVID-19 itself, and most persons are crying foul because of financial difficulties. Some persons would have been at hotels and cannot foot the bill any longer, and then they find themselves homeless. And when they do, they try to reach out to their councils, they try to reach out to the embassies. And in some cases, the police is also involved if they go into the police station or if police is called in. And then we are asked to assist because that person no longer can foot the bill. That person could no longer stay in the hotel. And that person now become homeless.
Safri said the situation was affecting the level of assistance the organization gives to the homeless in Barbados. He said while the Alliance does not mind assisting where it can, the relevant embassies and consulates must step up and share the burden.
On average, it could cost between $100 and $150 for any one person to stay here because you have to calculate bringing in the security, you have to calculate meals, you have to calculate if there are transportation costs aligned with it. In some cases, we found ourselves having to pay for people's PCR tests by giving them cash. So we are calling on the organization, calling on the bodies, and we're also going to call on the ambassadors and the councils or whatever they may be to a meeting to look at ways that we can help their citizens. None of the embassies are without reach in terms of the people that we are seeing. As I said, we are seeing people from the European nations. We are seeing people from England, USA, Caribbean nations. And we stand ready to assist. The organization stand ready. Every time we are given a call, we assist these organizations, we assist these bodies. But at the same time, that while we assist, we can only go so far as an organization that is cash. Obviously, because of the economy and how things are, we are struggling on our own with our own little funding that we have.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To news from the region, the Guyana Teachers Union is not at all happy with the Ministry of Education's decision to mark teachers absent if they fail to take a COVID-19 vaccine, and they have made it clear that members will not participate in a school assessment exercise unless the ministry rescinds the decision. The GTU is also against having teachers produce a weekly negative test from the start of the new school term on September 6th. More from News Source, Guyana.
Teachers who remain unvaccinated will be required to produce a weekly COVID-19 PCR test result at their own cost or be marked absent from school. The decision by the Ministry of Education has angered the Guyana Teachers Union, which announced late last night that it was withdrawing from participation in the current assessment of schools and all other planned engagements with the Ministry of Education with immediate effect until the statement by the ministry is withdrawn. The GTU said teachers who are good enough to teach NGSA, CSEC, and CAPE exams and classes and mark the NGSA exams, and even participate in school preparedness and assessments with no vaccination requirement. According to the union, it has been called upon by its members to act now in their best interests. The GTU said it is not opposed to vaccination, but it must be voluntary.
Well, we had asked the ministry to retract the statement they released, but we haven't seen any movement. So we are meeting to decide on the way forward. The union will be making an announcement soon on our option.
And finally, despite previous calls from allies for an extension for evacuations out of Afghanistan, President Joe Biden maintains his ground, saying the U.S. is on pace to meet the August 31st deadline. More from Reuters TV.
We are currently on a pace to finish by August the 31st.
U.S. President Joe Biden on Tuesday held firm on his end-of-August deadline to withdraw completely from Afghanistan as the threat of militant attacks on American forces mounted. But he left open the chance of the deadline being extended.
I've asked the Pentagon and the State Department for contingency plans to adjust the timetable, should that become necessary.
Biden also emphasized that each day on the ground in Afghanistan brings added risk to U.S. troops from an attack by an Islamic State affiliate.
The longer we stay, starting with the acute and growing risk of an attack by a terrorist group known as ISIS-K, which is a sworn enemy of the Taliban as well. Every day we're on the ground is another day we know that ISIS-K is seeking to target the airport and attack both U.S. and allied forces and innocent civilians.
Biden also said he spoke with leaders of the G7 nations on Tuesday, telling them that completing evacuations by month's end is dependent on continued cooperation with the country's new Taliban rulers, who demanded that all foreign evacuations be done by that date.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.